All right, welcome everybody to our latest Live Motocross podcast as we talk all things AMA Supercross ahead of the Arlington round with Jason Thomas. Obviously, firstly, thank you to everyone for listening and supporting the site. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to thank our sponsor for this episode in Fly Racing, who have excitingly jumped on board for the 2025 season. Fly Racing is aimed to provide customers with the very best in off-road performance products. Led by the revolutionary Formula S Smart Helmet, Fly Racing continues to push innovation in safety to new levels. Never before has style and technology blended together so seamlessly as the 2025 Fly Racing lineup. For more info, check out flyracing.com or your local dealer. Plus, follow at Fly Racing Global on social media and cheer all their athletes in the SMX World Championships and with the MXGP fast approaching. There's some pretty awesome talents out there too. All right, welcome JT. How's life and thanks for joining us, mate. It's another cold one in Arlington after Detroit, but the grind keeps going for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, all is well. It is cold here. It is colder than normal, and unseasonably cold, as they say. But that's okay. It's going to be just perfect inside AT&T Stadium on Saturday, so we'll survive.
Yeah, mate, absolutely. And just to touch on the fly racing theme, obviously a massive weekend. The one just gone for you and the team, obviously with Cooper Webb winning, RJ on the podium, Langenfelder winning in that second Italian preseason round, Lucas Coonan winning a moto. So exciting times ahead of that MXGP Championship and Arlington this weekend.
Yeah, it was awesome. To for Webb to get the first win was great, and RJ had a really nice bounce back, and I think on the MXGP side those guys they look ready to roll. Langenfelder seems like he's on form. I don't know if where that will put him up against the likes of Kyle Wolf, but time will tell. And I think many people are very anxious to see how Lucas Kuhnen stacks up in that MXGP class. So it's an exciting time for us. We've been working really hard to position ourselves for situations like this, and thankfully it's happening, and let's hope it keeps going.
Yeah, it's exciting times, mate. And obviously, Arlington's going to be another massive weekend for the series for Fly for everyone. Obviously, the Triple Crown military appreciation round. It should be absolutely epic, mate. So, one of the best stops on the calendar, isn't it, Arlington? It's going to be box office this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, this place is amazing for anyone who has never been here. I know that's a really difficult to ask, but I talk to people all the time, and they make kind of one pilgrimage a year to the States, and they pick one race. Weather-wise, not exactly what you'd want, but experience and the atmosphere of the race inside the stadium. You're never going to find a stadium on earth like this one. It's bigger than I have the vocabulary to describe. It's just one that at some point in your life you should try to make it, because the stadium itself is just so on a grand scale. It's really hard to go without seeing.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It's going to be an absolutely cracking round. And yeah, it's up there with the sort of Glendales, the A1s, isn't it, mate? Would you put it in the top three, top five of the ones to get to for sure?
Yeah, I think if this we've had this race in like April before, and when you get like spring weather where it's 70 degrees outside, and it's right up there. Atmosphere wise, it doesn't have an A1 feel, but neither does Glendale. But it would be in that Glendale arena where fantastic weather, amazing stadium, a lot to like. Literally the only thing you could say about it is it's cold. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only detraction. Everything else about this race is A plus. So yeah, after Detroit, where there's a lot to dislike, even though the racing is good and the stadium's nice, there's a lot to dislike outside of that. This one, if you can handle wearing a jacket while you're outside on Saturday, everything else is A plus.
Yeah, it sounds good. And obviously, heading into this one, obviously, you've just done your Racer X column and you're previewing the track, and it looks like another interesting one. They've obviously done some really nice layouts this season as a whole. It's been really solid, a lot of challenging ones. And you look back to Glendale, that was particularly the case for that one. But yeah, obviously, the dirt's pretty solid. The riders quite enjoy this one too, mate. But the Triple Crown Carnage, I guess, what are your keys to success track wise and the key features that'll, I guess, determine the success and failure of a lot of riders?
Well, the start's going to be pivotal, as we know. This start is longer though, so that's going to help guys on the outside. And there are certain riders that like positioning themselves to the outside, and they use horsepower and they really want to drive it in deep. They don't want to be on the inside and the elbow match that goes on between the best gates. And that happens all the time because the best riders go for the best gates in the best position, So you have this war for position and everybody's elbowing each other, and someone has to lose that fight, and you end up getting shuffled back. Well, those guys on the outside, the Justin Cooper, Tomac's out, but he would be another guy. Hunter Lawrence was another guy that likes to do this. They'll swing outside and they'll be out there with lesser talented guys on lesser equipment, and they will use that to their advantage, and they'll just drive it in, and they'll drive right around the outside of that entire pack of riders all scrambling for position on the inside, and they'll use it to get a good start. So this start, long story short, allows that plan to happen where we've had a lot of short starts in recent weeks. I would say most of 2025 has been really short starts. That plan doesn't really work the same. You don't have time. It's just a matter of distance, and you need that extra distance to be able to leave the power on and drive in deeper. On a short start, you're basically, as soon as you dump the clutch and shift to third, you're on the brakes again. There's no time to get to the left or the right to make that outside move happen. So watch for that this weekend. If you don't have the best gate position, it's not a death sentence like it has been at many of the other rounds.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool to see how it plays out. It's a few options. And yeah, it's definitely going to be key getting it out of the gate. And obviously, I guess we could start with Sexton on the topic of starts, mate. Just last weekend, he obviously rode exceptionally, but yeah, having that spill in the first lap, hitting the gate, he's once again left a lot of points on the table, and you can't do that with someone like Cooper Webb, riding around with the visor off as well. It kind of looks cool, but yeah, he's certainly putting himself in adverse situations. Obviously, he's the only one that's won 2 races, but you can't keep just making these errors and bleeding points and hoping you're going to be in it come season's end, I guess. So he'll be definitely looking to rebound just and put in a complete performance, mate, but easier said than done in the Triple Crown for sure.
Yeah, it's a tough thing for Sexton because he's riding so well, but these mistakes that he's making are hiding that fact, because if you look at Tampa, he coulda, shoulda, woulda won. If, you could say that Malcolm was going to pass him anyway. Okay, maybe he would have, but he would have finished second in the race for sure, without any doubt, which propels him forward in points. Like that's a big swing dropping back to fifth or whatever he got. Even, first or second, I'm willing to say Malcolm gets him and he gets second. But that swing of moving Webb forward and Sexton back is a big deal in the points. Then you couple that, you go to Detroit, he sets the fastest lap. You could argue he was the fastest guy, and he ends up third. That's another 10-point swing from first to third between those two guys. Like we're talking about, I don't know, 25-point swing in 2 weekends where he was either winning or the fastest guy in both rounds. Like those are, when you look at how a championship's won and lost, it's these nuances and the subtleties within the race that you're like, oh, well, he went 5-3 or whatever it was, 6-3. Like that's not the end of the world, but what was he set up to do? He was set up to possibly go 1-2, 1-1, 1-3. Like it could have looked very, very different. And now he's embroiled in a dogfight with the one guy that no one wants to be embroiled in a dogfight with. So, we're only halfway. We're not even halfway. Nothing is lost. But I just look at these little things here and there. You could say San Diego was the same thing. He was absolutely ripping through the pack to get back to sixth. He should have never gotten sixth. He completely melts down on the first lap, almost gets landed on, and then crashes 2 turns later. It was very similar to what happened in Detroit. Those points, when you get down to the nitty gritty in the last couple of rounds, you're going to wish you had those 20, 30 points back that were unforced errors, because the game's already hard enough. It's already hard enough to beat the best guys when everything's equal. When you start adding in unforced errors and these little things that you don't have to do, like, nope, he just fell over in San Diego. And I know it's racing. It's not like you're going to be perfect, but these are not things that, like there are going to be things happen. I guess what I'm trying to say, there are going to be things happen where he doesn't have control of the situation. That's a part of a series. That's going to happen to Webb. It's going to happen to Sexton. It's going to happen to everybody. Look at all the guys out already. These things happen. The things that you don't, or the things that you do have control over, you have to make sure you maximize those things if you want to be champion. And it's easy for me to sit here on the sidelines and say that, but I've watched a lot of championships go down, and the things that go on within those championships that don't get the high, get all of the news afterwards, and we'll go into May and June and we'll have a champion, whether he is or isn't. We'll just think about, well, yeah, he was really good. Remember, he won A1 and this and that. If he loses, we're not going to think about these little points losses that added up to a lot over the course of the season. And what really got me down this track is if you think about 2023, he came out on top. He ended up winning the championship. But early on in that series, there was a race in Oakland. There were a lot of races where he was winning and just tossed it. I mean, just threw his motorcycle down the racetrack and gave up a bunch of points. And he was 18 points down going into Denver. That was the situation. He wasn't in position to win because of all these things. And remember, this is a guy that was fastest qualifier 13 out of 17 times in 2023, and he's 18 points down with 2 races to go. And you ask, how can that be true? It's because of unforced errors. And here we are again. So it's more of a cautionary tale that you cannot do these things and expect to be the points leader when we get down to the final couple rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great insight, mate. There's a lot of body of work, sadly that he's missed opportunities and hopefully he can certainly scrub up on it, mate, because, he's got all the talent and the skill and the speed and it's going to shape up as an awesome battle. A great dynamic between him and Webb, different styles, different strengths and weaknesses. It's going to be fascinating. Obviously, the mentality side, Webb has the edge, and I wonder if he'll start bringing out the finger gun or anything like that, mate. Do you see that happening? Sort of crush him while he's a bit weak in the confidence, mate?
You know what? I don't think so. It's interesting, and I haven't really thought about the finger gun in a while. There, back in that time, there was a lot of vitriol and there were hard feelings between Webb and Roczen. These two guys did not like each other. There's a lot behind the scenes that, girls and relationships. There was just a lot to unpack there as to why they didn't like each other, but they didn't like each other. So I think Webb had added incentive to kind of go at him on a personal level. I don't feel that with Sexton. I don't feel that he has the need to or the want to make it personal with Sexton. I think he's just like, I'm going to beat this guy. I know how to beat him. I know that I just have to keep the pressure on, and he's going to make it easier on me. He's going to give me opportunities, which he is, to Webb's credit. He is doing that for him, but I don't feel the animosity between these two in the way that and Webb and Roczen have come a long way. They're absolutely cool now, but there was a time, especially that time we're talking like 2021, these two did not like each other under, like the strongest of terms. And that's where you get the real personal stuff where they're going to take shots at each other. It just doesn't have that feel to me. And you never know. One incident, they run into each other, a takeout move, anything could change that dynamic. But right now, it just feels like a very sportsman-like competitive nature and none of the other nonsense type stuff.
That's awesome. It's purely sort of racing, I guess, keep the foot on the throat in that sense.
Well, there's just respect. I think that's it. There's respect between them. And I think Webb at the time, there were so many hard feelings between Webb and Roczen. The respect was out the window. Like they didn't care about respect anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's always awesome to see Webb doing his thing out there. And I guess from your perspective, the riding's been really great. The speed's been really good. The whoops have been really excellent. Obviously, him and the team have made a really concerted effort to skim them as much as possible just to get that job done, which is opposed to Justin Cooper, who was skimming on the weekend, in fairness. But it's really cool to see Webb in the battle. He's always got that sort of mental edge. Do you think his speed's a little bit underrated as well sometimes? Obviously, on the East tracks, he's got all the crafty race lines and the race crafts, and, he's mentally, physically strong. He can adapt to a lot of different things. He's very creative, handles pretty much all situations with his experience. And obviously, you mentioned he's won 6 times in Arlington too. So it's looking like it's going to be hard to beat this weekend, isn't it, mate? But there's a lot of things there that he probably doesn't get as much praise for as well, like the raw speed.
Yeah, he's really worked on that. And I think if you went back to 2023 when he was in the fight with Sexton and Tomac, I think it was fair criticism to say on a pure speed basis, he was the weakest of the three. And I think he is honest enough with himself to tell you the same thing. He's like, I needed things to go my way to beat them straight up because Sexton was quicker almost every time in the lap time game, and Tomac was winning a lot when he wasn't on the ground. So he has really dedicated himself to working through the week to get his sprint speed up. And a big part of that is having Justin Cooper around. He credits Justin Cooper with sprint speed during the week because that is a strength of Justin Cooper's is qualifying speed, early lap sprint speed. Like if you get the start, Justin Cooper will take off a la Anaheim 2. Like he will try to dip out of there. That wasn't really in Webb's repertoire. So Webb has really leaned into him as like, okay, when we ride, I need you to go for it at the beginning, just like you always do. And that's going to force me out of my comfort zone early in those laps to go with you. And that you do it that for long enough, and it's going to show up on Saturdays. And Webb has really taken that to task of shoring up that hole in his game. And is he the fastest guy on the track all the time? Is he the fastest qualifier? Likely not. But instead of being ninth, where he was at the time, even in his championship years, he would qualify eighth, 10th. Now we're seeing him on the board almost every time. Like he's 2, 4. That is a noticeable improvement. And I think that gives him confidence. And I think it shows up when the gate drops. He's not working up from the back. He's not, kind of sussing things out and then making his move. Like he's instantly on it. Like I think that race in Glendale, the race 1 in Glendale was a perfect example. Like he got the whole shot and he's like, all right, I'm going to take off here. And Jet was able to close the gap. He couldn't do anything with the gap, but we haven't seen Webb do that in a long time where he just got a hole shot and started pulling away immediately. Like that's a pretty recent development in his game.
Yeah, it's really cool to follow. And you sort of look back. I remember speaking, I think, Levi Kitchen on a podcast when he was back at the Star Days, and he mentioned, one thing about some of those really elite riders, you look at whatever facility it's at, the way if they're not doing so good on the practice track, if they're way behind off the pace, they really let it get to them, and it's a really competitive environment. And he mentioned like someone like Webb, you can tell it just doesn't affect him the way he just clicks over and he's like, yeah, on to the next one. And the same with the racing. If he has a bad qualifying or a bad heat race, he can overcome it really quickly. And I guess that's just the pure competitive spirit when it comes to racing. I guess you put that down to Webb. That's one of his strengths, isn't it? How he can quickly not let things affect him and just move on to the next objective, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, a big part of racing is being able to compartmentalize things. And you cannot let a bad result affect the next weekend. You simply can't do it. And, it's a really hard thing to master though, because how do you tell an athlete, hey, don't let this bad day drag into next week. But hey, if we have a really good one, take all of that and drag it with you. Like it's a really hard thing to wrap your head around is you're being so selective on what you're allowing your mind to latch onto and your mood be affected by and all. Like, gosh, that's such like high level psychology to be that tuned in where like bad, no, good, yes. Like it seems easy, but man, when you're racing is such an emotional thing, and these guys live and die with the result on the weekend. And I watch a lot of other sports, and I'm sure many other people do. I know for you, it's Premier League football and all these things, right? Like these guys, when they have a really big win or something, a lot of times they'll allow themselves to enjoy it for that night, and then good or bad or indifferent, the next day they're on to the next. No matter what, no matter if they win the Premier League Cup or whatever, like doesn't matter. They're going to process it, enjoy it, or if it's a really bad one, they're going to let themselves sulk and they're going to be pissed off and they're going to mope around. But when they wake up the next morning, done. We're out. We're moving on because there is no time to do anything else. So I think Webb has embraced that. I just know from a personal level, it's hard. And I've seen a lot of guys like, I'll give you an example. When I was, around Chad Reed all the time, and it's my best friend on earth. I talked to him more than he talked to his wife at the time. And if he had a bad race on Saturday night, I just knew that like my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was going to be pure crap. It was just going to be terrible because I knew his attitude was going to suck and he was going to be an asshole and I was just going to have to deal with it. And, but like, I will tell you this, by the time we got to the race the next Saturday, you would have never known if he got first or 40th the prior weekend. I took the brunt of it a lot during the week. There was a lot of harsh comments and he would just air out his frustrations, but that's part of what being friends with someone is, like at his back no matter what. But he didn't, no matter what, you would have never known when it came time to race the next weekend. There was no lingering effect at all. So I talked about this where I'm going with this. I talked about this on somewhere. Oh, when Sexton makes that comment about um, we're not judged on our defeats, we're judged on kind of how we bounce back. I'm paraphrasing there. He's judged on how he responds to something like that. I was almost like, yes, okay, cool. I would be more impressed though if he's just like, yeah, not even thinking about it. Like Detroit's gonna be a new one. I'll worry about it there. Like he's almost giving you a window into his soul, saying he's like, no way, I'm gonna bounce. Like you can tell how much it bothers him. It's like I'm torn about how I feel about it because I'm like, yes, that is true. Like we are gonna judge you. Like, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna be better? But I would feel like he's further along in his psychological, emotional development if he's just like a tear off, like, yeah, whatever. I freaking screwed up in the whoops, whatever. Like, keep it moving, whatever. So I don't know. Just an interesting case study in a lot of different ways to look at the same thing because on the surface it sounded like exactly the right thing to say, but the more I thought about it, I was like, it just still seems like he's too emotionally tied to that mistake right now. And I would rather him just be like, was stupid. It was really dumb. I should have won the race. Like, whatever. Let's move on. But yeah, interesting to me anyway.
Yeah, it's fascinating opinions there on a lot of really cool topics. And yeah, I guess, yeah, you look at it deeper and it sort of, you can tell that it lingers and it cut deep and it hurt for him. And I guess looking back to whatever athlete you're talking about, it is understandable, how it is a bit tough to detach from the results to go on again and do whatever. But yeah, they're elite. They essentially, it's a 24/7 thing, dedicating yourself to your craft. And I guess some of the older guys, maybe having that family does take some of that burden off because obviously if you're just doing it by yourself and there's so much thinking time and you know that the others are working and you're maybe if you're sick or having a bad day or have an injury, you know that you're losing out on valuable time. So there's so many sort of mental things at play that can obviously have negative effects on these riders. And maybe that's a reason why Kenny's doing so well. He doesn't maybe necessarily consider himself a title candidate, but he's in the hunt. He's kind of just letting it come to him. He's a bit more relaxed about the whole situation. So I guess your analysis on Roczen, his mindset, obviously disappointed not to win, but great ride as well. His fitness is clearly there. He's happy with the bike. So he's just letting it come to him a bit more, and it's kind of working in his favor, isn't it?
Yeah, he's in a great spot. He's really happy with his motorcycle, and they made a big suspension change in the off season, and it seems like it's really working for him. And realistically, anytime Kenny is happy, that's going to tend to lead to success. That's just as simple as I can make it because he's so capable and so talented. If he's right and he's happy and feeling good, the rest I'm not really worried about because I know how freaking good he is on a motorcycle. It's just is all the other stuff, is the health stuff, is his bike right, is his mind right? Those are all the things I'm worried about. So when he's as loose as he is and comfortable, like the results are almost a guarantee within, like, okay, Tampa outlier events, but the riding performance is going to be there. Now, the only question I really have, and I've had this for 3 weeks now, is what does this look like in April? Is this the same thing? And February 20th, is that Ken Roczen the same as April 20th? And since his injury, it has not been. And I'm not saying it's going to be the same. I'm just posing the question. And I've talked to Justin Brayton, I've talked to Ricky Carmichael about this, and they're all like, I don't know, he looks a little different to me. And these are really intelligent, insightful guys. So I'm not saying they're wrong, not at all. I'm merely posing the question because this has been the problem every single year is that he looks great and then it slowly deteriorates into a place where a championship is not possible. That doesn't mean he can't do well or be on the podium it's the consistency of elite level performance that starts to deteriorate. And you throw in a seventh, you throw in a couple bad nights. That's all it takes. That's all it takes when you're dealing with guys that suck the life out of any championship like a guy like Webb would. They don't need much. And I would say the same for Jet last year. These guys don't need much to take advantage of it and never let you back into the championship. You had a bad night. You had a couple bad nights. You got eighth, but you gave them 12 points. I'm sorry, but now it's over. That's just what it is, because now you're going to go back and forth, yo, 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 yo. No points are gained, and those 12 points end up being the difference. Like that can happen with these guys. So I love having Kenny in the fight. It's awesome. You could say the 16-point gap that he's down is really problematic at this point. I'm not even going to go that far. I'm just saying that I need to see this guy, the guy that can lead and go that fast in Detroit. I need to see him in Pittsburgh and Philly and Jersey and Denver. If I see that, then I'm here for it. Like, let's go. Let's fight it to the end for the championship. I haven't seen it yet. So when we've had a lot of instances, and this could be anything in life, when you've had the same scenario set up 5 times, 7 times, and the result's been the same every single time, that makes me think the result the next time is going to be the same. It doesn't mean that's going to happen. That's what math tells you. That's what statistics would tell you. That's what the tendency is. All those things, if this was just a purely binary thing, somebody would come in like AI or something would say, well, no, that's going to happen. History has told you over and over and over. What are you, stupid? Of course this is going to happen. Now, that's not fair to Kenny, and every year is a new year, but that's what he's up against. That preconceived notion of what's going to happen is what he's going to have to upend if he wants to finally get this thing done. And he knows it. Everybody should know it. It's just the age-old question. Can he do it or can't he? And we're going to find out.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Obviously, the past indicates the future, especially with a lot of these experienced guys, like you just said so well, mate. But we love to see an outlier, and it'd be good if he could defy the odds and obviously be there right to the end. But it's just a case of wait and see. And I guess we'll move on to the 250 West, which is back in action. Should be another barnstormer, this one. Obviously, Smith coming off the win at the last round in Glendale, wasn't another triple crown. So these guys are getting used to these gate drops. It'll be really interesting to see how that battle with Deegan and Juju goes. Watch that rivalry continue. There's just so many storylines at play here, and obviously the development of Cole Davies as well. He wants to move himself into an alpha in that class already, even though he's only a few races into the professional career, mate. So it's going to be pretty awesome, that 250 class too.
It is. It's this 250 West delivers. You've got a three-way fight for the title, and I don't think there's a clear favorite at all. I think Deegan is the one I would probably put my money on, but I don't have any real conviction because he hasn't given us any reason in 2025 to have conviction. So between those three, I think it's slight favorites here and there. And then you've got this upstarting Cole Davies that really wants to make things interesting. And back to Triple Crown, like 2 Triple Crowns in a row is a lot to ask of anybody. And the start is critically important. So Cole Davies and Bomer have been getting the starts. Deegan has not. Does that matter here in Arlington? I don't know. I will say I've heard some really good things out of the Deegan camp as far as this time off and the steps they've taken with him and his riding technique and cleaning things up and like, hey, like you're better than this. Let's figure out what's going on here. And they think that they've got him in a much better place than he was. It's easy to think that until the gate drops. You don't really know, but they haven't really had a reason. Like I don't really get a lot of smoke kind of blown at me up there for a lot of like falsehoods from them. Typically, when they tell you something like, "Hey, we're in a good spot," like they don't really lie. You can say a lot of things about them, but especially Brian. Brian kind of is a straight shooter, and when his kid's not riding real well, he'll kind of tell you. But when he is, he'll also tell you. So let's see if that shows up on Saturday. I want to see the Hayden Deegan we all expected in early January to show up here in late February. So that'll be kind of interesting. But as far as the series goes, I just love it. Bomer's been out of nowhere. Like everybody knew he's a great rider, but not arguably the best rider in the class. Jordan Smith, the experienced one, really broke out in Glendale, gets the first win for Triumph ever, and he's coming in with a boatload of confidence. That goes without saying. He's looking at these young kids and saying, well, I can beat these guys. Like I don't have to go up against somebody like RJ or, like these guys, they've never been in this spot. Deegan's never won this title. Bomer's barely won a race. Like I can do this. So I think he's coming in with a lot of life breathed back into his program after Anaheim 2 and that late race crash. So it's fascinating. And that's pretty poor analysis on my part, but it's poor analysis because I truly don't know what's going to happen. And that's great. Like you could tell me the results and I could tell you kind of why that likely happened. But on the front end of it, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and I'm anxious to watch just like a fan.
Yeah, there's so many great subplots, and there was four winners in the first four rounds, and obviously Deegan would have expected to, win a few of those, put a flex on these guys. And Juju, like I think we touched on before, he actually will be coming out swinging for sure because he dropped some really valuable points in a couple of those rounds with the spills as well, especially at the Triple Crown, getting the whole shot and losing it early. So he'll have a lot to prove. And another man, it'd be really good to see Shimoda. How's that recovery gone? What condition is he in? So I guess do you see him in contention or just fighting for the podiums? Pretty solid for him.
Yeah, it's going to depend because he didn't get anything worked on with his fingers and he just did therapy. So I talked to Dr. McGinley that is very involved in the series now, and he was very surprised they didn't do anything at all with those fingers. So I think his fingers are going to feel better. That's a net positive. But you think about he hasn't practiced really since before San Diego, so he's going on 6 weeks of no real practicing. So what is more important, that his fingers feel a little bit better, or is he rusty from not really riding at all? Like these other guys have been just hammered down, trying to get better, practicing during the week, like nonstop improvement. And Joe's been forced to kind of sit around. And yes, okay, ride your bicycle and do these things, but there's no substitute for on the bike training, period. And even the skill set that he has honed and came in and just crushed everyone at A1 and so on point, there's going to be a little bit of deterioration in the sharpness of that blade, right? That's just a natural thing that happens over the course of weeks of not riding. That's just a part of what happens. So that's what I'll be looking for. If he comes out and is ripping and is super sharp in qualifying, I'm like, okay, he's going to be good to go here. But if he's a little bit off, that's going to clue me into he hasn't been riding. So that's a part of this. And what does him being a little rusty look like in those three main events? So yeah, I don't have the answer, but those are the factors that are going here when he one plus, one negative, which one outweighs the other?
Yeah, it's going to be really good to see what version we get of Joe. And obviously, just quickly, pro circuit, obviously, Marchbanks, he returned at the last one from that shoulder injury a few weeks back. So he's got some valuable reps on the bike. So he should be pretty solid. And obviously, it looks like no Adams or Masterpool. Pro circuit, yeah, it's been a rough season for him. Obviously, having the McAdoo situation. Seems like he wants to race on at the next East stop. And obviously, Hammock had got a bit of food poisoning. So obviously, Kitchen getting the win was great for some success for them. But yeah, it's been an up and down year for him again, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's there's a lot going on over that Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki truck. There's no doubt about that. You mentioned Marchbank coming back. I don't think he has any pressure, but I don't know necessarily what he's gonna kind of do either. I don't know what the ceiling is for Marchbanks. I had high hopes coming in, and then he kind of dashed those with a crash, and then it's really just kind of gone worse from there. He got that heat race win, and I was like, all right, this is something like that's a really good ride. And then he couldn't do anything with that in the main event. So um I don't know what to make. And then yeah, it's Adams was going to try to be here. When he told me that in Glendale, I was like, all right, that's a goal to aim for, but don't do yourself in trying to be here. So yeah, we'll just kind of have to see where those guys when they can get back and what that looks like.
Yeah, it's going to be really good to follow. And obviously, lastly, I guess before we let you go, mate, just your take on a bit of the red flag controversy, which Anstey essentially got robbed there with that massive lead, had to go back to the staggered restart and ended up getting done by Kitchen. Few words on that, mate, just quickly.
Yeah, that was that was tough for Max. And Max is a guy where you don't see him angry often. You don't see him show raw emotion to the negative very often. So I think he was a lot more angry than he let on. For him to show us that was almost like, well, it was pretty mellow. I think to get that from him was a real indicator of how truly pissed off he was about what went on. And I think, the Bobby Reagan comment he made was he was so angry about the race outcome. That was an outlet for him to really vent on because he had been stewing on that. And then this thing rips away from him, a win away from him. And he's just like, I'm going to lose my mind right now. Right. And I could see him off to the side, like just trying to compose himself so much because he knows he needs to. Like he is this guy that uses this word sportsman, and he knows what his job is, and he needs to represent these brands, and he takes that very seriously. But there was a fire burning inside of that guy that he wanted to say some really harsh things, and he couldn't. So um, it's tough. The rules are the rules, and the only thing I would say is he started with the lead, and he had shown that he was the best guy, and he needed to do it for 3.5 laps. He needed to do it for 3.5 more laps. And it's easy to say they ripped away from me, and I wouldn't really disagree, but at the same time, it was still there for him to take also. Still there. Like all he had to do, going outside in the stand was a critical mistake. That was a huge blunder that he made, opening the door for Kitchen there. And then he just lost the cat and mouse game. He simply lost the duel between those two in that game. And unfortunately, that's the way it goes, man. I would be raging pissed. I would have been so furious. But at some point, you have to look and say, well, I had it. I had, even as bad as it went, even though they did all those things, I still took off with the lead with that short amount of time to go, and I was unable to close the deal. So if anything, I think it'll give him some fire and some motivation to come out swinging in Daytona.
Yeah, mate, great to get your thoughts on it. Could probably go on for ages about solutions and potential fixes for the rule or whatever else. But yeah, we'll wrap this one up now, mate. And just lastly, any final thoughts, couple of predictions, and just how excited are you for this quality round, mate? You'll be busy with the broadcast and everything else you do. It should be another good one.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I think these Triple Crowns add a lot to the show for us. These military appreciation races allow us to tell a lot of stories about other aspects of these racers' lives and their interests. We're going to share some stuff about Ken Roczen being involved with a veteran family. Cooper Webb's grandfather was a World War II veteran. Like, it just expands our horizons a little bit and opens, the door to other things that we can talk about other than the technique and the riding and all that stuff. So I really treasure these types of events. The Triple Crown format to me is superior. And then the ability to really talk about the human side of this racing thing that we do is I really kind of enjoy that part of it on a personal level.
Yeah, absolutely. The fans love that kind of insight, getting to know them under the helmet per se, mate. But yeah, definitely, that's been an excellent podcast, mate. Really appreciate you taking the time. And obviously, massive thank you to Fly Racing for sponsoring this one. Go check them out on social media. Check out the website. Check out your local dealer. And obviously, follow all the Fly Racing riders this weekend in Arlington. So thanks again, JT. Been awesome to get you on, and look forward to speaking again next week.
Thanks, Meg. Thanks for having me.
No worries, mate. Have a good one.